And what's happening, everybody? Welcome on in to the Check Your Brain podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, the free version going out every Wednesday at the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the others. They're on the major podcast platforms as well as YouTube, Rumble, I'm just spreading myself out just so I can get as many listeners and viewers as I can here on this podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. I am also on Patreon, so if you support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur, for just $3 a month, you get early access to guests as well as other content. And one of those guests you get early access to is the one who's on right now with me. His name is Bennett Yellin, and Bennett is a longtime writer. Although I don't want long time makes it seem like you're an old man, but I don't want to say
I am an old man, Tony. So that's absolutely accurate. Yeah.
Well, if the birth date that I saw in IMDb is correct, you don't look that age.
I know. Well, I mean, sometimes I guess being inside, being indoors, being away from nature for extended periods of time, like all writers do, you don't get exposed to the elements as much. So therefore, you don't get worn down as quickly. I'm going to put this on right now because I just got it today on the picket line. I thought, it just occurred to me.
So we're recording this. It's early June right now. And like I said, you are a writer. You're a Hollywood writer. And you're dealing with a writer's strike right now. And you and I were talking off the air about the big strike that happened in 2007, 2008. And a lot of the shows got shut down. I remember Jay Leno was shut down, and then there were scabs, and there were other places that were completely shut down, others that were crossing the picket lines. And first thing I want to ask, because you are on the front lines, you have a sign. If you want to pan over and show the sign that you have there. For folks watching on YouTube.
What's that there? What's that say?
So
to me, it looks Russian because it's completely backwards, but hopefully it writes itself and it makes some sense.
Yeah, we don't want it to be Russian. I think that's a pretty bad thing nowadays.
Oh God, please.
So what's interesting about Hollywood writers that we've heard in the last, you've probably heard this since you started your career, is there's no new ideas that are happening in Hollywood. Writers are just going back to the well, and it's the same old shit over and over. We can curse, by the way, if you want. The same old stuff over and over and over again. They're trying to reinvent the wheel. There's nothing original. It's just superhero movies and Star Wars. And ultimately, we realize that as much as the Tom Cruises will get paid $20 million for Top Gun, and there's money, just seems like it's a sieve. It's just floating out there for so many of these actors. The writers are getting virtually nothing. I mean, they are like the old contract players from the MGM Paramount days, and you guys are really working for peanuts. So you want some fair pay. So in your way, can you explain what's going on in this writer strike, how it's different from other writer strikes, or if it's similar? And what is your side? What are you guys looking in terms of trying to get some kind of compensation? What is a compromise down the road if you can get there?
Wow, that's so we have 4 hours today. Is that right?
It was going to be 5, but it's we're pressed for time today.
That'll easily take. I first of all, I apologize to anybody listening because I am the worst. I'm the worst person to try and explain the strike, but I'm going to try and give you my ABC, my very elemental what's going on here, and there are kind of some. Let's first take it. What's at essence what's happening is that writers who used to be able to, and first of all, I want to shake the image of anyone who writes for the industry is wealthy, and they all have multiple homes and multiple families and multiple swimming pools, and they live extraordinarily high-end lives that no one else, and so they're all spoiled, whiny bastards. That's half of that's true. No, I am whiny sometimes, but I'm not spoiled. But that's not true. And what's happened is that it's such an old story, like the companies make more and more and more money, and then they look at the money they're making and they're saying, how can we shave? How do we make more money? Well, you make more money. You find ways to cut what money you're paying out to people, and that's what happens. Is the trickle down ends up coming down to the writers, who end up being paid less and less. And I'll give you a simple example of how of this, just because a lot of this strike is very much focused on the TV writers and TV, which is now it's streaming. It's a streaming industry. We now have a technology that in 15 years ago when we struck, streaming was just starting. We didn't know what it meant quite, so we sort of made some preliminary agreements, not realizing that streaming would become the basic way that most television entertainment is presented now. It just is. It's huge, and very much the way that with Napster, when musicians and Napster, and that came around, and now all musicians are trying to figure out, how do we get appropriately compensated for our songs and for our work now that there's this new technology. That's very much what when we'll get back to more new technology with AI. But let's say you're lucky enough to be on a show and you're writing for a show. Now, years ago, not that long ago, a typical season for one show would be, let's say, 22 episodes. You're hired, you're a writer, you're on a show, and you get paid a certain amount for 22 episodes. Now, the reality now is there's only 10 episodes a season, and they're paying you less per episode than they paid you when you wrote 22 episodes. That's what's happening. That's the inequality of compensation. You're getting paid less for writing less. So that's one thing. A big element that's being addressed is this change in the way that TV writers get paid. That's one. And there are other way more arcane problems, like these things called mini rooms and that's it would take an hour to explain that one, but that's more of an inside kind of thing but again, the bottom line of that is it cuts down on paying a writer, employing a writer for the amount of time a writer should get employed. I know writers who had to write on 2 or 3 shows to make up for the amount of episodes that they would have written just like 5 years previously working on one show, and is still struggling because they're not getting enough. So that's that element. Then
well, because I just want to stop really quick, because sure. I'm friends with another TV writer who lives in New York now named Tom Leopold.
Oh, Tom Leopold. Yeah, I've heard.
And Tom has written for Cheers. He's written for Seinfeld. He created the Babu Bot character, and the suicide episode with Newman was going to jump off the building and everything.
He's great.
Of course, you talk about something like Seinfeld that to this day is on Comedy Central, still gets residuals. I just saw his episode a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So he's going to get a check. Now, I don't know how big that check is. I'm not a Hollywood guy. I'm here in Ohio with a very dimly lit backdrop here. If you're watching.
That's a backdrop? I thought that was a real wall.
See, if it gets darker than this ring light that I have, which is just a porch light that'll pop up, it'll be really nice. But
I see some moths floating around.
So you talk about residuals that you're going to get that check. Now, I've heard people getting checks for like 6 cents, and others are getting like really nice checks because they have producer credits as well.
Yeah.
But then you get to the streaming element where the shows that are exclusively on YouTube, or I mean, not YouTube, but Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, where is those residuals and where is the watchability factor? And how does that factor into some of these writers that for something that people are already paying into because they have a subscription service? What is that compensation going to be like? And I was concerned about that, like you said, about the Napster thing when what's his name, Lars from Metallica was really upset by it. And I think a lot of people really they didn't get it at the time. And I think they've come around and understood, wow, so I get this music for, I used to go to some like a Sam Goody, a Camelot Music, and buy a CD for $17. Now I pay $10 and get unlimited music. Who's getting paid here? Yeah. And I think it's a fascinating thing when you look at streaming and how many of these services out there, and you go, okay, so this is a great show. You enjoy this, but where's the compensation? Who's getting paid? A show like Succession. Yeah, of course. You're going to get Brian Cox is going to make a lot of money and some of the characters, but what about the writers? What are they getting paid for this? And that's one thing that I've always been wondering. And you wonder about the product down the road does that compromise things because they're not getting compensated properly?
And there's no, what they do, streaming companies that have streaming services play this game where there's no transparency. They won't tell you how much they're making and how they break it down, how they're making it. And so you don't know what your product on that streaming service is making. You don't know what it's making them. And that's where you have to figure out what residuals are. So one of the things we need is we're trying to get more transparency from them. If they tell us what they're making, then we know what we're owed. That's the bottom line of it. And they're not telling us. So we're trying to figure out new ways to get what we're owed. That's another thing too. And then the whole AI thing, which has become such a big part of the publicity that associated with this, is we're sort of on the front lines of an industry where the AI impacting it could have a huge impact. And so we have, as writers, we like to think we have writers, because we're so misbegotten, because we always feel like we're like, if there's, we're like sub tundra when it comes to being appreciated. We're like underneath. We always fantasize that we want to be appreciated. We want to know that we are a hugely important part of the creative wheel, and that you can't do it without us. That's what we want. We need to hear, because that's what we believe. And that's what I believe, and AI, basically what AI does. And I think instead of being called, what does AI stand? Artificial intelligence. It should be called more like artificial. It's not thinking. It's just reconstituting. Let's just call it
repurposeful.
Reconstitution. And so it's taking things, but it doesn't create. It doesn't combine them and come up with a new creation. It combines them and comes up with a Frankenstein monster creation that doesn't do things in a graceful, intelligent, creative way. And so we're worried that studios are going to use AI for part of the creative process, like generating maybe a crappy first draft of a TV script, and then they'll bring the writers in to smooth it out, to make it better. And of course, thinking that way, they're like, and for a lot less than if the writers are the original creators of that content. And so that's something that we have to establish now, and for everybody. And it is for everybody, because if AI, it's not just for writing. AI is for voiceover talent. It's AI is for actors. They can recreate an actor. I mean, so we're the first ones sitting at the table really talking about it and dealing with the reality of it, the reality of artificial. Yeah. So that's another element.
And I think with artificial intelligence, AI, this has been something that's always been, it will continue to be in the back of my mind as somebody who's I worked in radio for 15 years. I'm a stand-up comedian. And when you think of TV writing, I think the first thing that it really is going to affect is legacy musicians in a positive way. So you can be Bruce Springsteen, and all you have to do is just fart out Springsteen isms, like New Jersey and Working Man and everything. And Red Hot Chili Peppers can talk about California and all that. And you go, oh, hey, here's a Red Hot Chili Pepper song that talks about California and, a couple of rhymes and everything. And you go, okay, that might work for an artist who's in his 60s or whatever. But what about today's artists, and how are they going to use artificial intelligence, or where's the heart to it? That's the one thing that's missing about AI, is there is no soul to AI.
No, it doesn't have the human touch.
And it's the same with stand-up comedies, that you will see a lot of comedians who are just going to say, all right, let's see, I talk about marijuana and depression and my girlfriend left me, or whatever the case is, put that in AI and you do it in your voice. Like, you can make certain comedians their artificial intelligence through their material, and go make a joke that sounds like Jerry Seinfeld, that could be present day and everything, and it could come out. It's just there's no soul behind it. And what you guys are fighting for, you writers are, look, nobody can replicate this. You can try and it can come close, but there's no replication of how like the soul of a true writer, whether it's a comedy writer, a drama writer, because they're pulling from their own experiences. And of course, as we know, AI has no experiences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of all, I'm sure that you've seen some of the AI generated, like they've done it. They've done like a TV script. I saw an AI generated Seinfeld script. I know you've probably read, I've seen AI generated comedy material that you read it and it's a joke that it's not a joke. Like it's so not funny, but
Yeah.
it thinks it's funny. It's like somebody at a party who thinks they're funny saying something that's not funny at all. There's a great article. God, I wish I remember where it was from, where Charlie Brooker, who's the brilliant guy who created Black Mirror, the show Black Mirror, which is a fantastic, he had it generate a Black Mirror episode, and he read it and he said, it just took all the ideas I've had in all my other episodes and it just glommed them together in the worst way. It said it was such a piece of crap, it's such a piece of shit, you know, and that's it, you know. But that's what I think the writer's fear is that the studios don't care how they get a first draft. Once they've got something, there's a structure or whatever, we'll bring in the writers for a very reduced price and have them rewrite. And that's just not, it's not going to work, you know, and we have to put our foot down, our feet down and let them know that and really establish things now, because this technology, we don't know how far it's going to go, but we've got to do something now at the beginning.
Now, would you say writers are adverse to AI? Like that's one thing I'm concerned about too, because you also don't want to be the people that, like, I think of the radio DJs of the early 80s who said, screw MTV, you know, we're still the rock radio, you know, everyone's going to wake up to us. And then you realize, nah, you kind of were dinosaurs. You were stuck in the past. You couldn't embrace the new technology that's happening. But
yeah.
When this technology, because ever since the smartphone came around and that everybody can be a YouTube or a TikTok celebrity, everybody can be this or that. And you realize, wow, so these random people, they didn't achieve anything. Like you can have something go viral and then you can be a star within days. And I think a lot of people are apt to embracing new technology, but what's the cost?
Yeah, well, there's no question. The reality is it's here. It's here and it's not going away. It is definitely, I mean, I won't even call it a Pandora's box because that's making it seem like it's all awful. I think there's probably a lot of fantastic positive applications for it. And it's just a question of how do we as writers in this industry, how do we learn to live with it? Maybe we can't. There are ways to embrace it. We have to figure that out. But we also have to make sure that we don't get minimize the importance of our human touch that we bring to something, that creativity that can't be done by AI. We can't be minimized by that element of our contribution.
As far as the compromise goes, because, you know, are you far apart? Or in your opinion, are you far apart? Are you getting some kind of inroads? I mean, this is really has been basically a month now. This is a lot of negotiations. Does this carry on through the summer? Does this carry on well into the fall when we get to a lot of or we get to pilot season and everything? Like, do you see an end to this anytime soon?
Well, here's the thing: there are no negotiations. They left the table, and so there's nothing. They left, and as a result of them leaving, that's when we started the strike. So we're absolutely waiting for them to come back. You know, they just made a deal with the DGA, and so, but in a couple of weeks, the SAG, the Actors Guild, their contract ends. SAG just yesterday voted 97% to authorize a strike if they can't get a deal within 2 weeks or by the end of the month. And it's very possible they won't. And if SAG goes out, that's a huge hit. I mean, if the actors don't show up, that's a huge hit. And that could very well impact the studios to come back to the table and start talking, which is what we want to get them to do. They're just not doing it yet. I think also as it goes along, what I think has to happen is they have to see the impact on their product. and they have to see it in very practical ways. I mean, that's why we're picketing. We literally picket to keep trucks from going into the studios, so that we're trying to disrupt production, so that whatever disruption we're trying to impact the product that they're making. And once they see that they don't have scripts past a certain date, and I know they've probably figured this out already, when we're going to run out of material, that written material, once they know that they can't get scabs, if there are scabs who are coming in to write for them, and it's going to start impacting the schedule, that's the time when they're going to say, like, okay, let's sit down. And and of course they're not the ones walking every day, Monday through Friday, so they're in perfectly fine health to wait it out, but we're not. It's so clear we're not going anywhere. We're there until they come back to the table, and until we get a deal that we think is solid and good and worthwhile and worth accepting. So we're absolutely not going anywhere. No.
It kind of seems like the beginning of COVID is that when all the studios, when everything kind of got shut down, is we're all stuck at home. We're looking for something to watch on TV. So everyone ran to, like, whether they already had a subscription or not, they got a subscription to Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, and you're watching everything. Okay, well, a lot of that stuff had been written the last couple of years. Eventually, then things started to dry up because that's when things got shut down. So eventually that people need to get together. And like you said, that when we realize there's not too much, when we're watching Mr. Belvedere reruns, we're like, all right,
when it gets to that,
get back to the negotiating table here.
That's the bottom. That is the bottom line. If we ever reach the Mr. Belvedere reruns have a spike in popularity, they're going to know we better get back to the table.
Well, look, when Bob Uecker is one of the great actors on the show, when you're a baseball announcer.
Exactly. Bob Uecker.
Although, did you hear that rumor about Christopher Hewitt? I've heard this from several different people.
I have heard it, of course. You're welcome to tell it as I adjusted myself uncomfortably.
Yeah, exactly. Let me adjust myself here and what I'm wearing. But so there's apparently there was a rumor, and I think it's been confirmed. I believe a couple of people were on the lot. I don't remember which lot it was, who confirmed this story that they had to halt production of Mr. Belvedere in the late 1980s because Christopher Hewitt, who played the character, he sat on his balls the wrong way and had to be taken to the hospital. I don't know if it was the hospital or if they just had to pause production, but he apparently sat on his testicles the wrong way. And look, if you're somebody who has testicles, you've probably sat on them the wrong way. You've sat on your keys or something, and it's not pleasant. And especially if you're the main character of a fairly popular sitcom in the late 1980s, you probably should stop production over.
And I think also implied in the story, which you very graciously left out, was that his genitalia was so pendulous that this is why this happened. Like not everybody accidentally sits on their testicles, but that his were so damn pendulous that that's how the accident occurred. I don't. It almost sounds like the Richard Gere,
gerbil story. Yeah,
gerbil story. Like, that's true because my sister was a nurse and she was actually in the emergency room when they brought Richard Gere and Mr. Christopher Hewitt in. It was the same night.
It's like those things are hanging. It's like, look, it's Los Angeles. You're dealing with some hot temperatures. Those things got to be hanging like melted Turkish taffy.
It was probably during the summer. The way to check if it really happened was find out the date, find out if it was a heat wave. Like there's ways to actually follow it up. Check. A good investigative journalist. This would make a good movie. Like she said, it's sort of a whole new take on it.
I think Doug Benson was the first one I heard talk about that. And he was, for a long time, Doug Benson was an extra. He would just be an extra in everything. And he was the one who's like, yep, I was on and I heard a couple other people say, oh yeah, they had to stop production. But So, before we go on, we'll talk about your career and everything. You mentioned to me off the air that, and I always like getting plugs out there first for people, that you are working on something that, of course, got halted because of this writer's strike. But are you able to tell anything about any details? And then whenever, hopefully sooner rather than later, when this thing gets resolved, that we can get a chance to partake in whatever you're working on.
Well, it's a perfect example of the give and take of what happens with a strike like this. And I started writing in like 80. I joined the guild in like 86 or 87. So I was I was around for there was a big strike in 1988. Then there was the one in 2008. And then there's this one. This is the third one where I'm on a picket line, and I'm like 63 years old. I'm like, oh, come on. Each time I get 50, I'm years older. I'm like, please don't make me go out and picket again. But you picket because you're doing it for the rest of the guild. I love my guild. I love my union. But so what happened was, I have a writing partner who I've written with for years. I wrote with the Farrelly brothers for years, but I've always written with writing partners because I like to be part of a team. I enjoy the give and take. I enjoy the friendship of it. It's not as lonely. I can't think of anything more lonely than going into a room and closing the door and being by yourself. I wouldn't ever want to do it. It's, and it's so much fun to hang out with your friend, and toss hilarious things, if you're writing comedy or any kind of writing, just to toss it back and forth and to mold it back and forth. So my writing partner, James, and I wrote a spec script a few years ago called Traction. And it's not a comedy, it's a supernatural thriller. Essentially it's a young woman wakes up and she's in a hospital room in traction. She has no idea who she is, how she got there, complete amnesia, and someone or something does not want her there. It wants her out. And what it is and what's happening to her all gets revealed. But it's a supernatural thriller, and we sold it hours before the strike. The producer who was interested in it took us to breakfast and said, guys, what's the reality of the strike happening next week? And we said, it looks like it's going to happen. So he said, then I want to get your script. I want to buy your script before the strike starts, because he wanted to go into pre-production with it. So that's what happened. Literally like hours before the strike, we got paperwork done. We got it signed. Now that's fantastic. I mean, we were thrilled. A spec script in this time, in this market, we were very happy about it. Here's the other side of it. We can't work on it. They're in pre-production and we can't do any rewrites or anything. We can't because we're on strike. We cannot do that. So that's the plus and the minus. I mean, it got bought and it's being produced, but until the strike is over, they want to shoot it in September or October, which means it'll come out next year.
Excellent.
But but so I'm thrilled.
Excellent. All intents and purposes here. That is, as long as we get to this point, we get to that, like I said, the hopeful compromise when people realize there's not much to watch on television anymore, and they come to the negotiating table. But we'll keep an eye out for that when that comes out. So it's great that you guys got in at the 11th hour there.
It was truly the 11th hour, and we were really pleased with that. And there'll be publicity on it, but we can't do anything, and respectfully we can't do it. So it's weird to be watching it from afar. Like they had a reading, and we saw they had a reading, and we're like, darn it, we wish we could have been there for that and might have been able to help. But that's the nature of it, and I understand it.
Well, now that you have some time, when you're not on the picket lines, I can do a podcast with you. And so I'll pull up here on your IMDb page, and of course, the IMDb page, I'm looking at a lot of the stuff that you were a part of. And
I've never been confronted with my IMDb page. Yes, go ahead.
Well, you want to try to do a little bit more multimedia. You don't want just two talking heads talking on a podcast here. So when it goes on YouTube, you get to show the visual element too. So you did do a little acting. You have the credits as guy on a plane and sound effects guy #1 and Stuck on You.
Yeah. What's ridiculous is that because I haven't checked this for a while, but I appear in Dumb and Dumber 2 3 times. Three. As an extra, like in the background. I'm sort of featured in the background. I didn't put those because I didn't know what to call myself. Guy buying a soda, guy peeing on the side of a apartment building, and guy waiting in line to get hot dog. That's what should be down there. That's missing. That's an incomplete IMDb.
Yeah, we got to update this. What's going on?
I
It's got to be
know.
like Wikipedia, where
Horrible.
the viewers can go check it out. But being known for Dumb and Dumber, and I've talked about it many a times, that it is still one of my top comedy movies, just movies in general. I'm a comedy is doing stand-up comedy, that I'm a comedy guy.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about some of the greatest comedies, and I think it's so weird because I feel like it's a monolith. Whenever you talk about your favorite comedians, everyone just resorts to, well, it's either Richard Pryor or George Carlin. It's like, okay, yeah, we get it. You don't really explore too much. You're just kind of told that that is the case. But growing up, my favorite comedy movies were Airplane, Blazing Saddles, The Naked Gun, which I watched again last night, and Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
And you start to realize there's a lot of shared writing and stuff. Of course, the ZAZ, Zucker, Abrams, Zucker, and then you have the Farrelly brothers. And the Farrelly brothers, of course, in charge of Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, and There's Something About Mary. And talking to the guy who is like really in charge of Dumb and Dumber, which is one of my favorite movies, that when you watch a movie when you're a kid, and next year is going to be 30 years, came out in 1994. It's a movie that you watch things as a kid, you're like, okay, that was goofy. But as I get older, I'm assuming this movie's it's not going to hold up. There's jokes that aren't good. And I watched it again, maybe I think about 3 weeks ago, and I'm laughing like I watched it the first time still. So talk about the whole thing, because you really are the backbone of this movie. A lot of people will say, oh, the Farrelly Brothers, that was a Farrelly Brothers movie, but you're really the central nervous system with this whole franchise here.
Well, that's Tony, that's very kind of you. But as a writer, I have an instant modesty module that keeps me very humble. And honestly, it is that movie is all three of us. You know, like we wrote it together, and they directed it together. They directed it together, but it really was everything. All the work we did represented the three of us. Perfect. It was really a blending of all of us. So I would never take, any credit other than as a third of the what put that together.
So there was like the Farrelly brothers and you were kind of like the ZAZ, right? Like you guys.
It was. And what's ironic is, maybe ironic isn't the right word. So we'll come up with another one at the end. But Pete and I met in graduate school. And then, so Pete and I started out together. So the first few credits that were with Peter and myself, the Paul Reiser special and things like that. So, and then we asked Bobby, because Bobby was so funny, Peter's brother, and who wasn't a writer, he was getting a business degree. And we asked Bobby always to read our scripts and to give us notes, and his notes were always fantastic. So at a certain point, several years in, after Pete and I had been writing together as a team, Pete said, "What do you think about asking Bobby to join us as a part of the partnership?" And I was like, "Absolutely. He's been great, a great help." And then we wrote together. The three of us wrote together, and that's how Dumb came around, and Dumb and Dumber 2. But here's the funny thing. It's interesting when you said how you went back and looked at Dumb and Dumber. The thing there have been, think about all the movies that are considered the greatest movies ever made. There's so many like movies that are great and they may have done really well and whatever, and they're forgotten. They're not remembered. Even though if you look back and you said, "Oh wow, yeah, that is a famous movie." Oh, and I remember loving that movie. But Dumb and Dumber is in this weird, rarefied zeitgeist of culty kind of movies that have somehow, because when it came out, it was very successful, having been the third Jim Carrey movie of 1994. He did Ace Ventura and then The Mask, and now the momentum on him was tremendous. And we came in at the very end in December of 1994. And so it did really well, but it was not received well. Like critics did not, it was a popular hit, but it was not a critical hit in any way, shape, or form. And so life could have just gone on and sort of Dumb and Dumber would have been one of those movies that people would say like 10 years later, like, oh yeah, that was funny. But no, that's not what happened to it. It gained in its popularity as people got older, and then people like, I can't tell you how many people, it's generational. Like somebody who loved it when they were a teenager shows it to their kids now, and the kids love it. And you can't, that's outside even of popular success. That's even outside of monetary success. That's something that gets bestowed upon a movie that you can't create it. You can't, nothing. We just wrote the movie and made the movie we wanted to see. But the fact that it's so embraced and has gotten over the years warmer and warmer reception, and people remember it in such a nice way. And it's such a beautiful thing. I never take it for granted. I'm so touched that all I wanted to do as a kid was I said, I want to write movies. I want to do something that takes people away from the worries of the day. I remember thinking that when I was a kid. That's what I want to do. I want to do something that entertains people and takes them away for a little bit. And to know that I've contributed in some small way, in 1/3 of a small way, to something that's done that is an incredibly satisfying feeling. It really touches me when someone tells me they like it. I never get tired of it. And it's not the ego part of it. It's just the fact that I achieved what I wanted to do as a kid. To know that I was able to do that is a really lovely thing. It blows my mind every time and it comes up all the time in my life. Multiple times in a month, I'll be impacted by, I'll either see a quote from it or see it on TV, or somebody calls me and says, oh, I just ran into somebody. It turns out it's their favorite movie. All the time, Tony. It never ends. And I never get tired of hearing about it. I get tired of me talking about it because I hear my voice and I'm like, oh God, Bennett, shut up. But I don't mind hearing about it at all.
I think it's become like the Shawshank. I think it's become Shawshank, where it comes on TV and it's what you watch, and it's whether it's Shawshank or it's Forrest Gump or something, and you just go, oh yeah, absolutely. I got nothing going on. I don't care if there's commercials and it's edited. I'm going to go check this out. And I think it's great. And I think what also is going on now is it's great diversion for a lot of people, that there's no politics involved. It's like, it's true escapism for 2 hours. You're watching, and you just say like, look, I just want to watch something silly. That's all it is. It's silly. It was, I'm going to go watch this movie with these two ridiculous characters and their ridiculous hijinks. Whatever's going on in the world, all the trials and tribulations that are happening, I got it. I got to do it. And that's why I think a lot of people, no matter political spectrums, race, gender, anything like sexuality, I think people enjoy that because it's just, again, it's dumb. That's what's great about it.
We didn't lie at any point. We called it Dumb and Dumber, and we delivered. And that's my mom, by the way, only had one review ever in her life. She only had one review of mine on her refrigerator that she kept. That's it, nothing else. And it was a review of Dumb and Dumber. And I wish I could remember who wrote it. But the quote that she had highlighted on the refrigerator was, "The writer's mother should be ashamed of themselves." That was my mom in a nutshell. I just love that was the only review she kept. But it's a lovely thing. And the Zucker brothers are part of how we got started, how Pete and I got started, because the way we even got started at all is that Peter and I met in graduate school in Massachusetts, and we instantly knew we had the same sense. We met the first day of grad school. We knew we had the same sense of humor, and so we said, let's write a movie together. Let's write a comedy. And neither of us had any connection to the business. He's from Cumberland, Rhode Island. Even though I'm from Los Angeles, I had no connection. My family had not, And so we wrote this stupid comedy called Dust to Dust about two idiots. This is 1986. So two idiots, and we were thinking Bill Murray and John Candy. who get a job at a discount funeral home, with special holiday layaway sale signs on it. And it turns out that they're smuggling drugs and everything. And now we had this silly spec script. What do we do with it? So Pete was on a date in New York, and the girl on the date said, Eddie Murphy moved in next door to her parents in Alpine, New Jersey. He was like, really? You ever see him? And she said, yeah, he was washing his car last week. And so he gave her Dust to Dust. She called about a week later and said, you're not going to believe this, but he was coming out to get his mail. I ran over and gave it to him. Meanwhile, I was at home for the holidays, for the they're not just the Jewish holidays now. It's also Christmas at the same time. And my sister Freda, by the way, my sister's name is Freda, and we did name Freda Felcher after my sister, just so you know, she is the original Freda. She said,
I love that anecdote, by the way.
Oh, yes.
When I was doing my research on you, and when I saw that, I'm like, oh, okay. So like, as a writer, you're pulling things from your personal life, and you hear that, I'm like, oh, okay, I got it now. I love that.
I think, not to be crass,
from Cranston.
From Cranston, yeah. Freda Felcher from Cranston. So she would go dancing, folk dancing, and she knew David Zucker of the Zucker brothers. And I said, Freda, will you give Dust to Dust to David Zucker? And she said, sure, of course. She gave it to him. Now remember, this was back in 1986 when you could do that. A script was a physical thing that you could hand to somebody, and you could possibly even hand it to a celebrity. It'd be easy enough to get it to David Zucker, who wasn't a celebrity necessarily, but Eddie Murphy at that time was the #1 box office. He had just done Beverly Hills Cop. It was coming off of that. And so we dissolved to 6 months later. And now there's an article in the Los Angeles Times all about, it was called the Eddie Murphy Script Derby. And it's all about how all these writers are trying to write scripts for Eddie Murphy to star in. And the opening of the article said, Eddie Murphy was looking out his Alpine, New Jersey home when he saw a sight that made his heart sag. It was a neighbor coming across the street with a script, the script, Dust to Dust. And here's what happened. She gave it to him. He read it. He loved it. He flew back to Los Angeles, and he was in LA for a while. They were looking for Peter Farrelly and Bennett Yellin, the names that he remembered from the script, but we weren't represented anywhere. We're just two guys still finishing our program in Massachusetts. And that they purposely put that in there so that hopefully whoever those guys would call in. And we called, we said, hey, we wrote that script. And they said, we've been looking for you guys. Eddie wants to meet you. He wants you to write something. Meantime, at exactly the same time, my sister Freda, not Freda Felcher, but Freda, says, Bennett, David Zucker read your script. He really liked it. He wants to meet with you guys. And we talked to David, and he said, I let my brother and our partner, Jim, read it, and we want you guys to work for us. So that's how we got started. We got started, and they had already made Airplane, and they had finished, they were about to release Top Secret, their second movie. That was the timing of it.
Okay,
so, yeah. And so
which for folks listening right now, they had Police Squad, which was the TV show, which, if you think about it nowadays, would be like a 5-season Netflix show, would have been so popular, but it didn't work for them on network television. So eventually they kind of retooled it and turned it into The Naked Gun, and then had 2 more after that. But I mean, you're talking about true, they were coming from the Kentucky Fried Theater, and what they were able to do with Kentucky Fried Movie and stuff, those sketches, they really were comedic geniuses, and they all worked really well in tandem, as well as Pat Proft.
Oh yeah, the Pat was. I feel like I am sort of the Pat Proft of the Farrelly brothers, the way Pat Proft is the Pat Proft of ZAZ, and so that's how we got started. And by the way, that couldn't possibly happen today. Not one bit of how we got started could happen today. You cannot, first of all, what are you going to do? Hand a hard drive to somebody, slip it into a celebrity's coat pocket? You can't even get near a celebrity to do it. So it wouldn't happen. We were astonishingly lucky to have a break like that. And not just that, but the material was funny enough that it made Eddie Murphy laugh, and it made David Zucker, and it made them laugh. So that our thank goodness we wrote something that was funny. And again, that was our first script ever, but there was something in it that they saw, and it got us off to a start. We were very lucky.
Well, I keep mentioning about the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams is that what made Airplane so great, and I think you know exactly where I'm going with this, is that Airplane, of course, you had Robert Hayes, who was, I think he was, I forgot what the TV show he was on at the time. Angie, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
But he was like not an A-list actor at the time. But you want to do a silly movie taken from 0 Hour, which is almost like a scene by scene. If you really watch 0 Hour and then you watch Airplane, you go, oh, this really is like, somebody should have paid big money for this, because it's almost a complete.
Well, they didn't pay big. They got it for very cheap, but they got it. They snapped it up right away because they knew it was a perfect template for them,
But Airplane, of course, the studio wanted comedians. They wanted the Chevy Chases, the Bill Murrays of the time, and the Zucker brothers, ZAZ. What they wanted is, they said, no, we need straight actors to do these parts, and to do them straight, to play them straight. And then that's what's going to make it funny, is the fact that you have Robert Stack saying ridiculous things, or Peter Graves saying ridiculous things as themselves, as being these straight actors, and Leslie Nielsen, Lloyd Bridges, everybody. And getting back to Dumb and Dumber, I'm sure the studio wanted, paired with Jim Carrey, to have some silly comedian of the time, of the early 90s. And you guys were adamant at getting somebody like Jeff Daniels, who was not known for comedy at the time. He was in kind of like some rom-coms, I guess, at the time, but he was a serious actor. And here he is growing his hair out and sticking his tongue in a pole and getting it stuck. And you say, like, this is hilarious to see somebody like Jeff Daniels. And I think a lot of people are like, why would Jeff Daniels do something like that? And my response nearly 30 years later is, why not? I guarantee you, if Jeff Daniels went to a Comic-Con today, he would get more questions about Dumb and Dumber than he would have ever gotten from anything else that he was in.
You're absolutely, you're right, and righter. You don't even need me, because you've got, that's all absolutely.
We'll wrap up the podcast there. Then I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay. And where are you going to be playing? So, but no, they did want a comedian, and we were like, no, first of all, we don't want there to be some competition between Jim Carrey and his co-star. It has to be an organic fit. And we also felt that if there was a comedian, I cannot remember all the names that they bantered that were, but we didn't feel they were. One of them was Sinbad, I remember, for the Harry.
1994 makes sense, yeah.
Right. It was really, really, really huge then. And we kept arguing that the point, we loved Jeff Daniels, and we loved him particularly. We loved the movie Something Wild, the Jonathan Demme movie Something Wild. And the first half of that movie is this kind of a wacky romantic comedy until Ray Liotta shows up, and it gets darker and darker and darker. But we thought Jeff Daniels' reaction to this weird, like, he plays this straight-laced guy who gets introduced to this crazy woman who takes him on this adventure, and his response to the craziness he was such a great reactor. It was so funny and so dry. And we were like, that's what you need, because Jim is this, he's this intensity, and you need somebody, like an actor will pull Jim back into sort of reality, Mm-hmm. And in fact, I remember the first time I met Jim, it was the day that I saw Ace Ventura. I was literally coming from the movie to go meet him. And I stumbled out of that movie going, is he going to be doing that? Like, because there's not a line in Ace Ventura that's delivered normally. It's all, and so the first thing he said when I met him, I shook his hand, and he said, come on in. And he said, but first of all, I just want to tell you something. I am not doing Ace Ventura in this movie. I promise you, I'm doing a character. And in my head, I was, oh, thank you. But we knew that Jeff was the person. An actor would pull Jim, who is an actor too, but it was so sort of at that point kind of known for his extreme portrayals on In Living Color, and he was a stand-up too,
And
extreme
people forget
stand-up.
that Jim, at that point, I think if you had done this movie in '86 as opposed to
Oh, wait.
'94, I think you get a
Yeah.
different Jim Carrey, because
Yeah.
he had only had like one major like acting credit, which was The Duck Factory, which is a really short-lived TV show that had it was like a weird cartoon mashup of, and
Yeah.
again, another show that I think on cable TV would have worked, and it didn't work that well. So you
Yeah.
got a little bit more of a seasoned Jim Carrey at that point, as opposed to just being the silly guy who was opening for Rodney on the road at that time.
And he'd done a couple of movies. He'd done, I think, Once Bitten, this kind of vampire comedy with no, I can't remember her name. Beautiful actress. And also Earth Girls Are Easy. He was in that too. So he'd done some comedy, but by the
Jack
time
Gilford was the name I was thinking of in The Duck Factory. Jack Gilford.
oh, Jack Gilford, yeah,
He was a great actor. I loved him.
great actor. But so by the time that he signed on to Dumb, he had already made Ace. It hadn't been released yet. He had made The Mask. It hadn't been released yet. So I think as we were filming, Ace had been released when he signed on, because that's when I met him. But then when he made The Mask, and I remember going to the movie theaters because New Line made The Mask, and so they were happy to have Jim be in Dumb and Dumber. That they were perfectly fine to put him in it. And they put a trailer for Dumb and Dumber on The Mask, and I would sit in the theaters and I would watch the audience, and I was like, and this is now, Jim's popularity is huge from Ace Ventura and The Mask too. And you could feel the audience, they were roaring at the trailer. And I said, wow, we are in a pole position here, coming in third. Like I had the chills, because I was like, this could be a big hit,
Well, and what I liked about that is, as you said, in 1994, is you have Ace Ventura and you have The Mask that comes out, and The Mask which is interesting because he plays Stanley Ipkiss, who is essentially he's the straight man and the foil, like he's the which is very interesting. It's like he's playing the Martin and Lewis in that movie. And it's it's kind of dark in some ways, and you have Peter Riegert, and but Ace Ventura, I heard, now you might be able to confirm this, that was a script that had been floating around Hollywood for several years, and they either couldn't find the right person for the part, or nobody wanted that. And it wasn't until it came out in the early 90s that finally they're like, okay, how about that guy who's playing Fire Marshal Bill in Living Color? He might be the guy.
I honestly don't know about it, but I can tell you that Dumb and Dumber was roundly rejected by every studio more than once, because we tried to retitle it to send it out again. We had two other titles besides Dumb, sent it out as Dumb and Dumber. Everyone turned it down, and then we called it Go West, and everyone turned that down. And then
why? It's a Marx Brothers movie.
And then we called it a power tool is not a toy, which was a song, and I cannot remember the name of the group that did this song. We just said, let's just call it something weird. That got turned down, and so it was repeatedly turned down over and over again, until this small little independent company called Motion Picture
The
Corporation.
Young Adults.
The Young Adults. Okay, Thank you. This little company, and we were, not only were we sending it out, but we were also saying that Peter was attached to direct it. And Peter had never directed anything, had no credits. He hadn't directed a music video, nothing. So it couldn't be a less appealing product to try and bring to a studio. This whacked script about these two idiots with a guy who's never directed, that made no sense. But there was a little company called Motion Picture Corporation, and the two producers, Steve Stabler and Brad Pavoy, they read it and they were like, this is funny. We don't care if he hasn't directed something, we'll make it. And they were going to make it for, I think back then, like $200,000, like under $1 million. Like they were, it was going to be that small. But once that gave a kind of gravitas to the reality of it happening, like there's something legitimate now. There's the script, just like usually in Hollywood, everyone turns it down the moment someone says yes. They're like, oh, I want that too, So that's kind of what interested New Line again. And I wish I could remember. I could have to ask Pete and Bob who originally got the script to Jim, because obviously once Jim read it and was like, I want to do this, that was huge. But he was at that time involved with New Line, having just finished The Mask. And so that brought New Line into the picture. New Line said, we'll co-produce this with the Motion Picture Corporation, and we'll let Pete direct. And they did. And the rest
is history.
Sort
of.
Yeah.
So Jim Carrey had a chip in his tooth originally, had a cap he wore, and then decided to take the cap off for this movie just to be a little sillier. Now, what as far as the original script and what you guys kind of put together and what we see right now when we still watch the movie, what differences were there? Were there some changes that maybe the studio had to come in there, or maybe some things had to get upgraded, or some things get cut? Like, what differed from the original script to what we see on television?
It very, very little, but I'll tell you, very, very little. And in fact, if you read the script, the shooting script, as opposed to you'd know how. I mean, there are moments of improvisation that they would always shoot what was written, and then Pete would say, "Oh, let's do another one. And if there's something you want to try it, you know." And some of those got in, absolutely. Sometimes Jim would come and say, "I want to try this. Let's do that," and that would mean another take. But the one thing that we did do that was the original ending was different. The original ending was different than the one with the girls on the bus. That was all reshot after we were previewing it with the original ending. And if I remember, the original ending is their friend who works at the hotel, the older gentleman, comes to them and offers them a job working at the hotel. It's all they have to do is work like 2 days a week, like a few hours a day, and they turn it down and walk away blithely. It just wasn't. It didn't have any impact. And once we previewed it, we said we need a more of a kicker of an ending, and then so we went back and the whole that whole thing with the bus was shot afterwards and was worked perfectly. But what you see is really what was in it. I mean, the improvisations are, I don't remember if the Mockingbird was in the script, whether we've specified that or they came up with that on set.
With Mike Starr.
With the indefatigable Mike Starr.
I love Mike Starr because, of course, he's in Sopranos, he's in Goodfellas, and he has that scene in Uncle Buck where he's playing the clown, the drunken clown. He's like, "What are you, Mother Cabrini? You never touch this stuff."
He's so good. And by the way, Joe Mental, played by what's her name, the MTV actress. That was originally a man. I mean, like in the script, Joe Mental was supposed to be a male, but she was great. Because I think we had never made a movie before. I'd never actually been in charge in the driver's seat. There were a lot of decisions we made were based on why not, rather than you can't do that. And if we knew better, perhaps we would have said like, oh, well, they won't let us do that. But no, we made the decisions out of kind of like a lovely naivete, which helps the movie, I think, a lot.
And Charles Rocket is great in that movie too. And it's weird. His career was really derailed because he said fuck on Saturday Night Live.
Right?
But he was great in that movie because for a guy who had a background in comedy, like he could have played that role, and he did play it very straight. And that's what I loved about that, is that he didn't go over the top. He didn't make it seem like, oh, hey, because again, I'm going back to Airplane, is that if you're in a comedy, if you're an actor who is playing a serious part and you're trying to play it straight and you're doing a comedy, that's where it's done. That's where it's like, okay, now we're doing Leslie Nielsen and all those other silly Dracula, Dead and Loving It, and all the other weird Mel Brooks movies. Is that when that you're kind of exposing yourself that way. And that's what I think Charles Rocket, it's sad how his life ended up committed suicide back in about 2005, but
it's terrible.
He was great in that movie. I thought
he was good.
I thought his career should have really taken off after that.
I know. And it's so sad how it ended. But by the way, David Zucker talks about that all the time when they were shooting Airplane. They had all these serious actors, and they were trying to get them to find the right way to deliver it and not be funny. Like they'd read the script and think, this is a funny line, I have to play it funny. And so they'd say, no, don't play it funny. Play it straight. Do not read that line. And they had to really adjust. And once he loves to talk about, like, Robert Stack got it right off the bat. Leslie Nielsen got it right off the bat. Lloyd Bridges sort of had to be directed because he went a little too much on the other side. He started playing it for laughs, and they're like, nope.
After it's the wrong week for quit.
Yes, to quit. Yeah, right.
Well, he said about Robert Stack, the way that they were able to do that was apparently John Biner, who's a previous podcast guest. John Biner did a Robert Stack impression of him doing something like where he does that speech where he says, he's the head honcho, the big cheese, whatever.
Yes.
And Robert Stack was trying to figure out, it's like, so John Biner does me better than I do me.
He did an impression of John Biner doing an impression of him. And that's how he knew, that's how they directed him to play it, which is hysterical. It's like do it as a Xerox of yourself, because how do you have the objectivity to see it in quite the way? It's like Nixon impressions were not accurate Nixon impressions. They were all like, there's one famous Nixon impressionist, David Fry, right? And everyone now does a David Fry impression of Nixon, which was a heightened, ridiculous impression of it. But everyone's doing David Fry doing Nixon. They're not doing Nixon per se.
Yeah, when everybody did the Ed Sullivan impression, everyone was doing that. We're a really big show, and it's like they did. I think that was another David Fry. I think it was David Fry and John Biner.
It was David Fry, and it was also, oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. It was
Frank Gorshin?
No, and he was famous for he was famous for doing, and I even think that they got the guy to do it in I Want to Hold Your Hand, because they hired him, the actor, to actually perform it. Oh, I wish I could remember his name, in I Want to Hold Your Hand. So when you see Ed Sullivan on I Want to Hold Your Hand, it is that actor who was famous for doing him at the time. Oh, it almost came to mind.
I'm looking. I'm looking it up. So when people are listening, they're like, "Come on!"
I know it takes a long time to write. I want to hold. Oh, I almost remembered it now, but I forgot it. But look who played Ed Sullivan, and that guy
Will Jordan. Will Jordan,
right? Very famous.
Will Jordan, who, by the way, I think towards the end of his career, basically he was only doing private events and doing the George C. Scott as Patton.
Like reciting the entire speech, the entire movie of Patton.
Be seated. Like he would do that. He'd wear the jodhpurs and he'd have the helmet and everything. Yeah, he was doing that until I think it was like 100 when he died. But
wow,
that's what was great about Dumb and Dumber, that I think is a comedy fan. But I think even if you're not a comedy fan, you're just somebody who likes watching movies, that you don't really appreciate the science that goes into this, and the fact that you can have a serious actor play with Jim Carrey, who is a comedian who does acting. And then now you have an actor who's doing comedy. And I think that's what made a really good marriage there. And then you look at what the Farrelly brothers did after that with having Randy Quaid and Bill Murray and Kingpin. And then you go on to There's Something About Mary with, of course, you have Ben Stiller, but Ben Stiller could play things very straight based on who his parents were. And, you throw in Jeffrey Tambor, you throw in, like this ensemble cast that works, Cameron Diaz, who, obviously in the aforementioned The Mask. It's working with those guys, the Farrelly brothers, just had to have been based on their output that they've put in movies and everything. And it's like, honestly, it's not a large output, but it's good enough where you go, these guys are like, they know comedy. And to be attached to that has to be something you really kind of keep on your sleeve here.
Oh, and I'll tell you another thing is that they are such great guys. They are mensches, the old Yiddish term for a good person. They are mensches. They're great guys, and so their sets are filled with the crew. They use the same crew over and over again because people want to work with them over and over again because it's fun. It's laughs. It's upbeat. And they treat everybody so nicely. And everyone like they are not imperious at all. They're not the directors, and someone can come to them and say, I've got an idea, and they always listen to it. And if it's, they are the essence of whoever can contribute something that's good, it will go in the movie because it makes the better product. We're a team here. Let's make the best thing we can. So what have you got for us? Bring it to us. They are the essence of that. So their sets are so much fun. Or they're a blast. Yeah, they're such great. I adore them.
That's what I was concerned about when that Three Stooges movie came out, and that when I had heard that they were putting a Three Stooges movie, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have Will Sasso is gonna play Curly, and we're gonna have Sean Hayes gonna be Larry Fine." I'm like, here we go. They're gonna butcher the Three Stooges. And then when I saw it said the Farrelly brothers, and when I realized that they were getting Billy West, who used to do he still does a lot of the great Three Stooges impressions, including Larry Fine, to coach them.
Yeah.
And when you watch the movie, it's like, is it the greatest movie? No, but at least those characters, those three, did the characters justice. And I thought it was great. And the fact that the Farrelly brothers were behind it, that's where I think a lot of that's what's great about it, is the fact that you're dealing with now royalty in Hollywood, where if a Farrelly brothers stamp of approval is on something, you're like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this. Like if it's if it's somebody else who's trying to butcher it, you go, oh God, I don't know about this. But when I see it says the Farrelly brothers are directing a Three Stooges movie, I'm like, okay, I can entrust that this movie, first of all, is not going to suck. It's just going to, take me on this journey because I've seen what your output has been. And, looking back, I know some critics didn't really like it that much, but I thought the performances were great. I thought Will Sasso really did what he could to channel Curly, and
all of them.
They were coached really well.
Yeah. And by the way, that movie could have been so many different things, but what they did structurally even was to just make it 3 shorts, because they love the Three Stooges and they know they're Three Stooges. And Mike Cerrone, who co-wrote it with them, is like a Three Stooges expert. So it's so affectionate. I mean, that my point is, so much affection for the Three Stooges that they were the right ones they really were the right ones to make it, and those actors they were terrific in it. I really thought they were great,
Getting back to Dumb and Dumber really quick, is that of course there was the prequel and the sequel. I remember going to see the prequel in the theaters, and of course there was the scene about Bob Saget and the chocolate and the bathroom.
We had nothing to do with that creatively, by the way. We even though I'm listed as executive producer, I just took that as a gratuity, like technically they said, do you want to be on it? But we didn't have anything to do with it. In fact, when they came to us and said, do you want to do this? Do you want to write it? And our problem was, we said, well, Dumb and Dumber is about 2 adults who are adult adolescents. It's not as funny when they're when they're high school adolescents, and that's why we said no. They're funny when they're adults, but they're not funny. It's not funny when they're younger. So we passed on that. But yeah, please go ahead.
I wasn't the biggest fan of that. I remember seeing it because, again, but that's the one thing, is you went to go see that movie because you enjoyed the original movie. And it's one of those where you just like, give me more. And then you realize, did I really want more? So
right. Or did I want that? Give me less.
What about the cartoon? Did you have anything to do with that?
I did have something to do with the cartoon. The cartoon was in motion to be made, and they decided, they came to us and said, do any of you want to work on the cartoon? And Pete and Bob asked me, and I said, well, sure, I don't mind doing that. But what the problem was, they dropped me in as a showrunner. I had zero experience, and a showrunner you have to actually kind of matriculate to get to that position. You have to start as a staff writer and move up and up and up on the chain. And I hadn't done any of that. So I got dropped into it, and I was absolutely over my head and didn't know how, and quite frankly, didn't know how to do it. So I hired a bunch of my friends to write episodes, and I wrote the first episode, but it was a difficult experience for me because I really wasn't a fit for it. I wasn't right for it. I wasn't ready for it either. So so I was involved, but and I actually had to leave it just because I realized I was in over my head, and I said, "Oh, I've got to give this to more qualified people." That was it. I wasn't qualified, so quite frankly.
Here's something that maybe you know, and maybe like one other person outside of me knows about this in the audience. That Dumb and Dumber cartoon, which was produced by Hanna-Barbera,
yes,
was the final Hanna-Barbera cartoon ever shown on network television.
Wow, we were the nail in their coffin.
No, I think they well, you know, so I'm here's weird trivia I'll say, because I like the fact that I was a huge, obviously, as all of us were Hanna-Barbera fans, but why did Hanna-Barbera go away? Like, why did it get to that point? And I'll tell you why. And I know you know this, is that by the 1980s, cartoons just turned into like public relations for merchandise. So long gone were the days of the Scooby-Doo. Well, I mean, the Scooby-Doo became fairly marketable, but there wasn't really, you didn't get a Fred Flintstone stuffed animal, but you can get a Transformer, you can get a Care Bear, you get a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. So those awful cartoons in the 1980s were just a way to sell toys. And because of that, Hanna-Barbera's cartoons really kind of went by the wayside at that point. And, you know, they did a couple other things like Two Stupid Dogs. It was on, was it TBS or what, some of those other networks, those off networks. But the last cartoon that Hanna-Barbera ever had on network television was the Dumb and Dumber cartoon show.
Wow. Oh, that's fast. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that either, but you're probably right. I know that I regret that I wish I had been more qualified, because I would have, you know, been able to. I mean, I've seen some of the episodes. I have never seen all of them, and you can get. I think you get DVDs. You can find them on YouTube and watch them too. You know, so when I came, they'd already decided that they were going to use the van, and they were going to have a beaver mascot with them. I can't remember what the beaver's name. So I dropped in late, but I thought the voice actors, Bill Fagerbakke and what was his name? The guy who did
Matt Frewer. He was
Matt
Max
Frewer.
Headroom.
Yeah, where the voice characters were. Those guys were great. You know, that was an interesting time in my life.
I barely remember that show, to be honest. Because
me too.
Again, I think they did a Ace Ventura show around that time.
They did. They did.
I'm looking here, and they
and the Mask show. They did a Mask show too.
Good Lord, they really tried to squeeze as much as they could out of that Jim Carrey.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. Look at that, Tom Kenny, who went on to be the top voice artist.
SpongeBob.
I mean, SpongeBob, Garrett Graham. Look at those actors. Bronson Pinchot.
Wow, Maurice LaMarche was in it. I met him a couple of last year. Kathy Najimy, who was
John Kassir, who was the Crypt Keeper. Yeah, it was Brad Garrett. Oh, look at that.
That's a great. I love voice actors. That's another thing, is that you talk about TV writers. Voice actors kind of got the shaft after Aladdin, that they're like, oh no, we need to get A-listers to do these parts. And they're like, yeah, there's a lot of great voice actors who could probably use some work too.
And they were going to really get the shaft if they could recreate their voices artificially, you know, huge shaft. So,
oh yeah, that's a good point. Dumb and Dumber, of course, the soundtrack, which I think is one of the greatest, and all my friends agree with this, is some of the greatest soundtracks ever. I've had an opportunity to talk to the guys from Crash Test Dummies, Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, which is a cover of an XTC song.
I didn't know that. It does a great soundtrack. I agree with you. Fantastic.
The original is pretty good, but I like the Crash Test Dummies version because you do have the duet that's in there, and the lead singer's voice is like it's like very bassy. It's really good. But New Age Girl, she don't like meat, but she sure licked the bone. I mean, these are just great songs. Too Much of a Good Thing is another great song by the Suns. Green Jello, I've seen them live, and they've performed the Bear song.
What other comedy can you think of that has a soundtrack that you remember? Like there are like a soundtrack of songs that you can remember. Not a lot of them. I'll tell you.
There's
said
there's the
Bennett
scene there's the
modestly.
scene in Dumb and Dumber when they play the cover of the Get Ready, the Temptation song, the Proclaimers do it, who do the I Would Walk 500 Miles. And the
Yeah,
scene, every time I play that song with some of my friends, we act out Lloyd in the car,
yeah,
where it's like,
yeah.
what are you,
Where he's
Lloyd, what are
running.
you doing? It's like you're running at an incredibly fast rate. It's like, God, we're not even out of Connecticut yet, and you're already annoying me.
Yeah, stop being so annoying. Yeah.
I mean, again, we're talking about a movie that's nearly 30 years old. I can quote it like I could just, I was actually, in fact, a couple of years ago, I was just in Providence, Rhode Island. And one of my coworkers, we were just kind of hanging out and we are just playing clips from we couldn't find it on whatever, network we were looking for, but watching the clips and going like, this is where it started. This is where the bug, the worm farm and the airport scene, all that kind of stuff is like, there was the, where he gets robbed by the old lady in the motorized cart. That's what's great about it. And after all these years, it really has become part of the vernacular, part of the zeitgeist. And, you talk about people who, oh, I'm sure you're sick of hearing about Dumb and Dumber, or like any kind of celebrity. Like again, getting back to Airplane, people will come up to Robert Hayes and say, I'm sure you're sick of hearing about Airplane, or Julie Haggerty. It's like, oh, and they're like, that made my career here.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you think I'm sick about it? No, of course not. I'd love to talk more about it.
What are you're telling me that that something I did impacted you in a way that it made you laugh? I mean, who would ever get tired of hearing that? I never get tired of it. It always touches me. It means a lot to me,
Well, I love the movie. I know a lot of our listeners will love this podcast and love the movie. And I'm gonna go. I might go watch it tonight. Let's see, what time is it? Currently on the East Coast right now, it's after 10 o'clock. If you're watching on the YouTube, yes, the from when we started the podcast to where it is now, I'm just doing this outside. The reason I'm doing this podcast outside is my wife's watching all her TV shows, and she doesn't want me to annoy her. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's like, oh, you're really loud on your podcast, you got to crank it up. And like, yeah, you know what, I'll just do it outside of my little outdoor studio here, and you can catch up on your programs after you got done with work. So yeah, no, it's
make sure you watch make sure you watch the original. Don't watch that. There's this awful like extended version that we had nothing to do with alternate takes and extra material in it. Watch the original one that you saw in the theater. The one, I think it's 1 hour 42 minutes.
And that's John Denver's full of shit, man.
That's John Denver's full of shit.
It's just, I can quote. Oh, I heard there were a couple other scenes that did get cut. One of them was the scene when Harry is shitting in the toilet that doesn't work.
That went longer. Yeah. I mean, like he literally takes the toilet, undoes it and is out the window. He's splashing it out the window.
He's taking it out, throwing the shit out the window.
He's literally carrying the toilet tank and spilling the toilet out the window. And the first cut, which was long, of like Dumb, was like 2 hours 40 minutes. It was long because it had everything in it. And Jeff Daniels' manager was sitting next to me, and the bathroom scene came up, and it was truly like 2.5, 3 minutes long. And he turned to me, and I'll never forget, ashen. There wasn't an ounce of color in his face. He said, "You're cutting that, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's out. Don't worry about it. It's out."
When I heard about that anecdote, and you realize it's like, oh, he's stuck in this toilet. How does the toilet get fixed? And you don't hear the answer to it. Like, what did he do? Did he actually miraculously fix this broken toilet? What happened? And when I heard that, yeah, he took the toilet off of the floor and poured it out the window.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that scene from the Charlie Brown Christmas. Is that at the beginning for again here, weird cartoon trivia, because I don't know, I must be on the spectrum or something, that it was sponsored by Coca-Cola. The original Charlie Brown Christmas was sponsored by Coca-Cola, and then by the with syndication by the early 70s, it was then sponsored by like Dolly Madison cakes and everything. And the Coca-Cola, which at the time you had the Camel Caravan, you had like in show sponsorship that was going on at the time. there were scenes where Coca-Cola cans and product placement was in the show that they had to digitally take out.
Oh, interesting.
So like there was that scene when Linus has the blanket and they're trying to throw a snowball to hit a can. Originally it was a Coca-Cola can.
Oh,
So they had to digitally take that out and just make it a regular plain red can.
oh,
Well,
funny.
when you see at the beginning of Charlie Brown Christmas, when Linus and Charlie Brown are skating on the ice, and then Snoopy comes around, grabs Linus's blanket, and they start to spin around. All you see is where Charlie Brown ends up, and he gets snow that's on his head, and it says Charlie Brown Christmas. Well, you don't see where Linus ends up because he goes into a Coca-Cola vending machine. Or it's
Oh,
either a vending
wow.
machine or a sign, and it said from the makers who bottle Coca-Cola in your area.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
it
So,
just
so
gets cuts.
they just like rejiggered the image so that that part of it that part of it was out.
I
That's
think it
great.
was just like a rough edit or something like that. They just like
Huh.
put it there and then immediately had to go to the next scene. And it's like at the end when they start to sing Hark the Herald Angels Sing, it cuts off at the end. It's because as they're singing, it says, brought to you by the makers who bottle Coca-Cola. And you go
Ah,
like, and now that I've seen this and they've hacked at it so many times, I'm like, all right, I think I'm an expert on the Charlie Brown Christmas. But that's what reminded me of it when I heard that, is that you don't see what happened with Harry's toilet, what happened when he's there. And it, like, in a way, I kind of like the fact that you didn't have a conclusion. You just, in a way, assumed that he had figured this out. You see him eventually come back to the hotel. And it's
yes.
nice the fact that you go, okay, well, it resolved itself and we move on and we get to the next scene.
You got the joke. You never had like no one ever thought like what happened when Mary would come back to her place with the toilet full of crap from Harry. Like you said, and nor should you as an audience be thinking about that. You should just be finishing your popcorn and getting ready to leave the theater feeling happy.
That's hilarious. Well, Bennett, this has been a great conversation. I love talking to you.
Hey, thank you.
Good luck with everything from from the strike, from after
Yeah.
the strike. And again, where can we find you? Can we find you on social media anywhere, or how can
I
we consume everything that is Bennett Yellin?
start with IMDb and go from there. But also I am on Facebook and I think I'm on Instagram. I just never checked that. You know, I'm an old fuddy duddy. I'm like, do I have to? How do you do this thing? What is it? What is this internety thingy type? So, but I am there. I'm on Facebook and yeah, and yeah, check out. Just go to imdb.com. Put my name in if you want to look at some other stuff. I've done a range of other kind of genres too, like horror, like the Traction, the script we just sold, is a supernatural thriller. But I've done the sequel. James Johnson and I co-wrote the sequel to this thriller, Joyride, that we did. It was direct to DVD for Fox. And we've done a Christmas movie with the WWE and things like that. So I'm all over the place. But yeah, I mean, or just go out and live your life and be happy. You don't have to follow my career. You can be happy without that.
Well, you know, you want to put a couple more bucks in your pocket. How's that
Well,
sound?
that's very kind of it. If of course the studios will send me the check. I've gotten a penny residual check from Disney.
You actually got a penny from Disney?
Sent to me in an envelope and on a check. Yeah, I've got a few of those actually.
Was it worth the writer's cramp that you had to write those checks?
I hope it was worth the cramp they got to send it. You know.
Goodness gracious, that's it's a true story. I mean, they had a whole Seinfeld episode where Jerry's face was shown in a Japanese or like TV show, and he kept getting the residual checks for like 5 cents, and
Yeah.
he's like, I'm getting hand cramps from this, and so. But Bennett, it was great talking to you again. Good luck with everything going forward, and we hope we can get to this writer strike. And you know, I hope AI doesn't like my wife works in TV news right now, and I'm hoping that AI doesn't eventually take her job, and it doesn't take yours. It doesn't take, because again, that there is a soul to songwriting. There's a soul to actual, like, whether it's writing a novel. You can have a computer do as much as you can, do whatever you can with that, but nothing will replace the human element of true writing and like the true experiences and the passion that goes behind that. And they'll try. God help them, they'll try. But yeah, good luck with that, because that's going to be definitely an uphill battle with technology going forward.
It's like, you just made me think of you've heard of the uncanny valley, that concept in digitally created visuals and special effects, where you're watching it and it's got there's just something off about it and it's not real. There's something that's what AI can bring you, is the uncanny valley of writing, or whatever AI is going to be used for. It can get close, but it can't capture, like you said, that human touch, which is what you ultimately need to believe it, and to know that that was made by a human rather than some circuitry. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, Bennett, thanks again for doing the podcast. This podcast is called the Check Your Brain Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more content just like this, check it out every Wednesday for free on the podcast, excuse me, the podcast platforms. And I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur for extra content and early access to guests such as Bennett Yellin. Thanks again, Bennett. And I'll keep in touch. I just requested you on Facebook, and can't wait to put this out. And thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. I had a great time.